Imagine a world where your daily commute actually relies on a whole constellation of satellites. Your banking, routed through space. Even the weather forecast. The one telling you whether to grab a jacket. That comes from instruments way up there, hundreds of miles above Earth. Well, welcome to that world, because that's pretty much where we are now. So for this deep dive, we're tackling something huge. The whole fast-changing landscape of space, its massive impact on, well, almost everything in our lives, and this really complex web of capabilities, policies, and, yeah, this growing competition that's defining this new frontier. We're going to unpack why space isn't just out there anymore. It's deeply tangled up with your daily life and, crucially, national security. Our journey today, it's guided by a really fascinating stack of documents. We've got a DIA report on security challenges, a joint publication on military space ops, and the U.S. Army CGSC space reference. Pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, a good mix. They give you a really comprehensive picture.
Right. Everything from, the physics of orbits, which sounds intense.
It can be.
To the latest satellite tech globally, and the whole geopolitical game playing out up there. By the end, you'll get a much clearer picture of how space works, how much we lean on it, the maybe surprising threats it faces, and who the main players are. It should make you pretty well informed on something that's just getting more important. Okay, so let's start basic. Foundational idea. Space isn't just for astronauts or sci-fi anymore.
Right. Not at all. It's completely woven into the fabric of daily life. It's almost invisible infrastructure now.
Yeah, think about it. Your home tech, how you get around, banking security, global comms.
Real-time news feeds, environmental monitoring, even how cities get planned. Satellites touch all of that.
Yeah.
And it's astonishing how deep that reliance goes, not just civilian life, but maybe even more so for military operations. For the U.S., for allies, space systems are just critical enablers.
How so? Like, what do they enable specifically?
Well, projecting combat power, for one. Collecting vital intelligence, like, ISR. Rapid navigation and positioning, PNT. And just global communication for security, for crisis response. They're absolutely fundamental to how modern forces operate.
And it sounds like other countries definitely notice how reliant, maybe over-reliant we've become. Our sources mentioned this Achilles heel idea. That sounds significant.
It is. It's a stark reality, especially when you look at, say, Russia's perspective, according to these documents. They explicitly view U.S. dependence on space as precisely that, an Achilles heel, a key vulnerability.
So they see it as a way to level the playing field.
Exactly. This view shapes their whole approach to conflict. They aim to exploit these dependencies to achieve their goals. And if you zoom out a bit, think about access to space. For decades, it was just a handful of nations, a very exclusive club.
Right. U.S. Soviet Union.
Pretty much. But just in the last, say, 10, 12 years, a dramatic shift. We've seen way more commercial companies, more nations developing their own launch vehicles, their own SLVs.
So the barrier to entry is just dropping.
Massively. Steadily fielding new capabilities, and crucially, the average price to get to space has declined. The bottom line, more players means more complexity, more competition.
And more stuff up there. More congestion.
Yes, exactly. More congestion.
And that congestion, it isn't just like a traffic jam, right?
Yeah.
It's got real consequences, like space debris.
Absolutely. It means widening threats from debris to everyone's space operations, all nations. It's getting less like open space and more like a crowded, high-speed junkyard, frankly, and that impacts everybody.
Okay, let's maybe bust a myth. How do satellites actually stay up there? A lot of people think centrifugal force pushes them out.
Yeah, that's a really common misconception. It's actually all about Earth's gravity, that relentless pull.
So they're not defying gravity?
Not at all. They're in a constant state of falling towards Earth, but they're moving horizontally so fast that they continuously miss the planet. It's a precise balance.
The controlled fall.
Exactly. And Kepler's laws, they basically map out this dance. They show us a satellite's mass doesn't determine its speed or its orbital period, just its path.
So size doesn't matter for staying in orbit, just speed and altitude.
Precisely. Space isn't defying gravity. It's this intricate ballet with gravity.
That really changes how you think about it. Okay, so different missions need different orbits, different neighborhoods up there.
Absolutely. Different jobs need different altitudes and paths. Let's start close in with low Earth orbit. LEO.
LEO, okay.
That's up to about 2,000 kilometers altitude. It's really ideal for things like comms, ISR intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and human spaceflight, like the space station.
Why is it good for those?
Well, less delay, less latency for ground communications, and you can get higher resolution imagery because you're closer.
Makes sense. But Downsides.
Definitely. Satellites are only in view of a ground station for a short time, so you need large constellations, lots of satellites, for continuous coverage. Think Starlink.
Right.
And they face significant atmospheric drag down there.
So their orbits decay faster.
They do. An average orbit in LEO takes maybe 90 to 100 minutes. Very quick lapse.
Okay, quick passes in LEO. What's next? Medium Earth orbit, MEO.
Yep, MEO. That's roughly 2,000 up to about 20,000 kilometers. This is really key for communications and especially positioning, navigation, and timing PNT services.
Ah, so that's where GPS lives.
Exactly. GPS satellites are squarely in MEO.
And the one people often think of for TV broadcasts, weather satellites. That's geosynchronous, GEO.
Correct. GEO is way out there, around 36,000 kilometers. The big advantage. Near persistent coverage over a huge chunk of the Earth. Not the poles, though.
Why persistent?
Because at that specific altitude and speed, a satellite orbits at the same rate the Earth rotates. So from the ground, it looks stationary, hangs over the same spot.
Gotcha. Ideal for continuous service like comms, ISR, and missile warning over a specific region.
Precisely.
What about something more specialized? I saw Molniya orbit mentioned. That sounds Russian.
It is. Originally used by the Soviet Union, it's a type of highly elliptical orbit, or HEO.
Highly elliptical, meaning not circular.
Right. A very stretched out oval. This specific orbit, inclined at 63.4 degrees, is designed for extended coverage over high northern latitudes. Think Russia, Siberia, places where GEO satellites aren't very useful because they're low on the horizon.
So how does the ellipse help?
A satellite in a Molniya orbit spends most of its time, like almost 12 hours out of its 12-hour orbit, way out at the far end of the ellipse. It's apogee, which is positioned over the northern hemisphere, so it appears to just linger over that area for a long time. Really clever orbital mechanics.
Very clever. Okay, from orbits, let's talk capabilities. The eyes and ears. Space Domain Awareness, SDA. Sounds like traffic control for space.
That's a good way to think about it, but it's more than just tracking. SDA is about getting timely, relevant, actionable understanding of the entire space environment.
The whole environment, what does that include?
It goes beyond just tracking objects, satellites and debris. It includes understanding intent, predicting what objects might do across the orbits themselves, the communication links, and even the ground stations. The whole system.
That sounds like a monumental task.
Yeah.
Are we actually good at it? What are the big hurdles? You mentioned the Space Surveillance Network, the SSN.
Well, the SSN is the backbone, but it does have limitations. A lot of the sensors are in the northern hemisphere, so there are coverage gaps.
And ground sensors depend on weather.
Exactly. Optical sensors need clear skies. And often the SSN provides sort of intermittent tracking, like snapshots, rather than continuous monitoring for every single object. There are just too many.
So potential blind spots, things could get missed.
Yes, those limitations can definitely create challenges in maintaining a truly complete picture.
But we're developing better tools, right? I read about the space fence.
Absolutely. The Space Fence phased array radar on Kwajalein Atoll, it's incredibly advanced. It can detect really small stuff, nanosatellites, debris down to maybe 10 centimeters across. A huge leap in capability.
And sensors in space itself.
Yes. Things like the Space-Based Space Surveillance System, SBSS, and the Geosynchronous Space Situational Awareness Program, GSSAP. These give us continuous, weatherproof views from space. GSAP can even perform rendezvous and proximity operations, RPO.
Meaning it can fly close to other satellites.
Yeah, to get a closer look, inspect objects of interest. Really sophisticated stuff for understanding what's happening in GEO especially.
Okay, next up, PNT. Positioning, navigation, and timing. Most people just call it GPS, our global compass.
And GPS really was the pioneer. The 1991 Gulf War was a huge demonstration of its military value. Launched by the U.S., the Navistar GPS system gives worldwide 3D position, velocity, and that all-important precise time signal.
And today's GPS isn't your grandpa's GPS, right? It's evolved.
Oh, definitely. Modern GPS, like the new Block 3 satellites, they offer much better reliability, better accuracy, plus new civilian signals L1C, L2C that allow for lower-cost dual-frequency receivers.
Why dual frequency?
It lets the receiver correct for errors caused by the ionosphere. That layer of charged particles in the upper atmosphere makes the positioning much more precise. And a really key point, GPS-3 satellites will not intentionally degrade the signal for civilian users. That old selective availability, it's gone.
So consistently accurate for everyone. That's big.
Huge. But it's also not just the US game anymore.
Right. Other countries have their own PNT systems now.
Yeah, the global scene has totally changed. Russia has GLONASS, global coverage. China has Beidou.
Beidou sounds quite advanced.
It is. They've got, what, 48 functional satellites now. Unique features, too, like text messaging and user tracking. Accuracy within 5 meters in the Asia-Pacific.
Here.
Europe has Galileo. 28 satellites include search and rescue payloads, even an emergency warning service to broadcast alerts. Then Japan has QZSS, a regional system, but it can get down to 10-centimeter accuracy, enabling things like automated driving or farming.
Wow. And India.
India has NAVIC, their own autonomous regional system.
So lots of options, but also
Right.
redundancy.
But
Competition.
Both. It creates resilience, sure, but also potential friction points. Each system adds its own layer to this complex global PNT picture.
Which brings up vulnerabilities. PNT is so critical now. Weapon systems, infrastructure. Makes it a target. Navigation warfare, nav war. The sources mentioned ionospheric scintillation. What is that?
Think of it like atmospheric turbulence for radio waves. Rapid, random fluctuations in signal strength caused by irregularities in the ionosphere's electron density.
Especially near the poles and the equator.
Yeah, aurora zones and near the geomagnetic equator, it can cause a GPS receiver to just lose lock on the signal, even dual frequency ones sometimes. It's a natural hazard.
And then there's deliberate interference. Jamming and spoofing.
Right. Adversaries are actively developing ways to deny PNT. Jamming just floods the receiver with noise. Spoofing tries to trick it with false signals.
How does GPS fight back?
It uses techniques like spread spectrum signals, which are harder to jam, and, importantly, integrating GPS with other navigation systems like inertial navigation systems, INS, which don't rely on external signals, creates resilience.
Okay, let's move to ISR. Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. The global eye in the sky.
A really good description. Space gives you these unparalleled vantage points. You can conduct surveillance over denied areas without violating airspace. Huge advantage.
And it's more than just taking pictures, right?
Oh yeah, much more. ISR includes things like environmental monitoring, tracking weather, climate change, disasters, nuclear detonation detection, and overhead persistent infrared, OPR. Those are the satellites constantly staring down, looking for the heat bloom of missile launches. Critical for missile warning.
When we do talk imagery, though, there are different kinds of resolution.
Right. You've got spatial resolution, how small an object you can distinguish on the ground. Spectral, how many different colors or bands of light the sensor sees.
Yeah.
Radiometric, how sensitive it is to brightness differences. And temporal, how often you can get an image of the same spot.
And multispectral imagery, MSI.
Yeah.
Sounds powerful.
It is. By looking at multiple specific bands of light, MSI can reveal things invisible to the naked eye. Detecting camouflage, seeing crop health or stress, finding concealed objects. It's also used to create detailed terrain analyses, even 3D views for mission planning. Really useful.
What's striking now is the rise of commercial imagery. That seems like a huge shift.
It absolutely is. For a long time, government spy satellites were leagues ahead. Now, commercial systems offer really high-quality imagery, often much cheaper.
And easier to share.
Big advantage. Easier to share with allies and partners because it's unclassified.
But the flip side.
The flip side is your adversaries can buy it too. From, over 50 commercial providers worldwide, makes it very hard to deny them imagery access. It's a double-edged sword. Examples like Pleiades Neo from France, Gaojing from China. They're selling high-res pics on the open market.
Beyond pictures, there's signals intelligence. SIGINT. Listening in.
Essentially, yes. Exploiting foreign communication signals, but also non-communications emitters like radar signals. It's a critical capability, very hard to replicate from the ground or air for global coverage.
Any key examples?
A really important one is the Automatic Identification System, AIS. Ships over a certain size are required by international treaty to broadcast their identity, position, course, speed on VHF frequencies.
Civilian system, but obvious military uses.
Absolutely. Tracking ship movements worldwide is vital intelligence.
Okay, last capability area. Satellite communications. SATCOM. Staying connected, especially beyond line of sight.
Essential for military forces. especially when they're deployed in places with no local infrastructure like Afghanistan or Iraq or moving rapidly. Terrestrial systems just can't keep up.
And like radio here on Earth, different frequencies have different pros and cons.
Exactly. For military SACOM, we usually talk about three main bands. UHF first, that's narrowband lowest frequency.
Pros and cons.
Most flexible, good for mobile users, penetrates foliage pretty well, relatively cheap. But low data rate, not very jam resistant, and susceptible to those ionospheric effects we talked about. Think push-to-talk radio via satellite.
Okay, next.
SHF, super high frequency or wideband. This is kind of the workhorse for both military and commercial users.
Higher data rates.
Much higher.
Yeah.
Handles high volume traffic, things like full motion video, large intelligence files, but it's more affected by weather, especially rain fade. It can be designed to be jam resistant, though. Think systems like DSCS and the newer WGS satellites.
WGS has protected features.
Yes, wideband global SACOM has features to protect against jamming and also supports the Global Broadcast System, GBS, for pushing video and data out to the field.
And the top tier for protection.
That would be EHF. Extremely high frequency, often called protected SATOM. Very jam resistant, good for mobile terminals, works well even in scintillated environments. High capacity, but a lot of that bandwidth goes into the encryption and protection features themselves. Systems like Milstar and the EHF payloads on UFO satellites.
Milstar had a really cool feature, right? Crosslinks.
Yes, groundbreaking at the time. Milstar was the first satellite constellation, government or commercial, to use crosslinks extensively.
Meaning the satellites could talk directly to each other without going through a ground station.
Exactly, like a mesh network in space. That's incredibly important for assured communications, especially if ground stations might be targeted or jammed in a conflict. Cuts out a major vulnerability point.
Makes sense. And beyond the dedicated military systems, there's a lot of international and commercial SKCOM used too.
Absolutely. NATO allies use their national systems like France's Syracuse, Italy's Sicral, UK's Skynet, and commercial giants like Intelsat, the world's largest fixed satellite service provider, and Inmarsat for mobile services. They offer huge networks. Plus LEO constellations like Iridium NexT and Globalstar for mobile voice and data.
All right, let's shift gears slightly. The space environment itself, it's not empty, is it?
Not at all. The documents describe it as a complex and dynamic system. Far from empty. It's filled with natural stuff like planetary debris, the solar wind constantly blowing past, radiation belts, high-energy cosmic rays, and increasingly, human-made space junk.
But Earth has some protection. Our magnetic field.
A fantastic natural shield. It's generated by the motion in Earth's liquid outer core, a sort of hydromagnetic dynamo. This field creates the magnetosphere, this teardrop-shaped cavity around Earth that deflects a lot of the solar wind, and it traps charged particles in the Van Allen radiation belts.
Donut-shaped belts of radiation.
Yeah, an inner and an outer belt trapping high-energy particles. Good for us on the ground, but a hazard for satellites passing through them.
So a lot of the weather in space comes from the sun.
The sun is the main driver. It's constantly active solar flares, huge eruptions called coronal mass ejections, CMEs, streams of high-speed solar wind pouring out of coronal holes. That's space weather.
And these events have real impacts on satellites and systems.
Big time. Solar flares, for example, can cause sudden ionosphere disturbances, SIDs.
What does that do?
Causes shortwave radio fade-out on the sunlit side of Earth, and radio noise storms static lasting maybe 15 minutes to an hour. And we already mentioned how the ionosphere itself can absorb, delay, or bend radio signals, messing with comms and GPS timing, especially during scintillation events. Then there's the radiation itself. High-energy particles, mostly protons, from flares can get here super fast, minutes sometimes.
What damage can they do?
They can cause satellite disorientation, actual physical damage to electronics, false readings on sensors, navigation errors. And then lower energy particles, protons and electrons, arrive a bit later, maybe days later, carried by CMEs or solar wind streams. These cause geomagnetic storms and ionospheric storms.
And those cause?
Things like spacecraft electrical charging static buildup that can discharge and damage components, increased drag on LEO satellites because the atmosphere puffs up, radar interference, errors in space tracking. GEO and MEO satellites, like GPS, are particularly vulnerable to this particle bombardment.
And that atmospheric drag. Solar activity heats the upper atmosphere, makes it expand.
That's right. Even a little bit of expansion increases the density way up high where LEO satellites fly. More density means more friction, more drag. This causes position errors, makes orbits decay faster than predicted. It can even affect satellites higher up than you'd normally expect during major solar events.
One more hazard mentioned, atomic oxygen,
Yeah.
ATOX corrosion.
Yeah, this is a weird one, specific to LEO mainly. High-energy radiation up there breaks apart normal O2 oxygen molecules into single oxygen atoms. These individual oxygen atoms are highly reactive. They basically want to bind with almost anything.
So they eat away at the satellite.
Pretty much. They forcefully corrode and degrade spacecraft surfaces, especially sensitive things like sensors or solar panels. It significantly impacts satellite lifespan and increases the cost and lead time for making resistant materials.
Okay, so space is tough, and now it's getting crowded and competitive. A new space race.
It definitely feels that way. The sources are clear. Since early 2019, competitor space operations, particularly from China and Russia, have really ramped up, pace and scope worldwide, and their counter-space weapons development keeps maturing.
China's ambitions seem particularly high.
Extremely high. Beijing's stated goal under Xi Jinping's China Dream is to become a broad-based, fully capable space power, second only to the U.S. in the number of operational satellites. Their program, run by the PLA, serves both civilian and military goals. They're rapidly improving ISR, their Beidou PNT system, comms, and developing anti-satellite weapons.
And their tracking ships are going global.
Yeah, the Yuan Wang space tracking ships have significantly expanded their operational reach, their projecting presence.
And Russia. We already had touched on their Achilles heel strategy.
Right. They see denying or degrading U.S. space capabilities, both military and commercial, as a key way to offset the perceived U.S. military advantage. So they're actively pursuing counterspace systems to do just that.
Okay, let's define terms. Counterspace measures. What exactly does that entail? How do they disrupt or destroy space systems?
It covers deliberate actions aimed at disrupting, degrading, or destroying any part of a space operation, the satellite, the link, the ground station. And these actions can come from any domain, space, cyber, or terrestrial.
Like directed energy weapons,
Yep.
DWIs.
Yep. Lasers that can dazzle, blind, or even permanently damage satellite sensors. Or high-power radio frequency weapons, RF jammers, that can disrupt or fry electronics.
And jammers specifically targeting signals.
Right. Mobile jammers targeting SATCOM and GPS are becoming common. Uplink jamming hitting the signal going up to the satellite is harder but can deny service over a wide area. You could even potentially send false commands. Downlink jamming hitting the signal coming down to the user is easier to do locally. The documents note China routinely includes jamming in military exercises, and they practice it.
And cyber attacks, that seems like a huge vulnerability.
It is. Attacks can target any segment. The satellite itself, orbital, the communication links, or the ground control systems, terrestrial. Think denial of service attacks, injecting malware, hijacking control, spoofing data to send false information, command intrusion. Both China and Russia view cyber capabilities as key military tools for space conflict.
What about physically hitting satellites? Kinetic weapons.
Kinetic anti-satellite weapons, ASATs. For a long time, only the US and the Soviets had demonstrated this, but then China did it in 2007, creating a huge debris field.
Sure.
India followed in 2019, and Russia tested another one in 2021, also creating dangerous debris.
So direct ascent missiles that just fly up and smash into a satellite.
Exactly, designed to physically destroy satellites in orbit.
And the most extreme option, nuclear.
A high-altitude nuclear detonation. Any country with nukes could potentially do it. It wouldn't necessarily target a specific satellite, but the electromagnetic pulse, the EMP, generated would cause widespread disruption, potentially damaging or destroying unshielded electronics and satellites over a vast area, plus effects on the ground.
A catastrophic scenario. Okay, with all these threats, we need rules. Policy, organizations, what governs space.
Well, at the international level, the UN Charter technically applies, requiring peaceful dispute resolution. The big one is the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, the OST. Key principles. Space is for all humankind, no national appropriation, no planting flags and claiming the moon, and importantly, no placing nuclear weapons or other WMDs in orbit or on celestial bodies.
Does everyone follow it strictly?
The U.S. approach, as noted in the sources, is generally adherence, but it selectively signs and ratifies treaties, and sometimes includes reservations or understandings, so it's a bit nuanced.
In U.S. domestic space policy, that's changed a lot over the decades.
Continuously evolving, driven by national goals, security concerns, technology. Back in the Eisenhower days, it was cautious, conservative, focused on unmanned science missions. Sputnik really spurred things, obviously.
And Nixon.
Under Nixon, space became more of an intermediate priority. Lots of domestic issues then. But that era saw the development of the space shuttle concept and the first real operational comms, remote sensing, and navigation systems starting up.
Reagan seems like a turning point.
Big shift in the Reagan era towards a space warfighting framework, emphasis on strategic defense SDI or Star Wars. Initially, heavy reliance on the shuttle, but after the Challenger disaster, a move towards a mixed fleet using expendable rockets too. Reagan's policy was the first to really talk at length about space control and force application.
Then more recently, Obama.
The 2010 Obama policy had a more cooperative tone, emphasized international collaboration, space as a global common, set goals for NASA for human missions beyond the moon by 2025, Mars by the mid-2030s.
And the current Biden administration.
Their 2021 United States Space Priorities Framework really highlights space across the board as an engine for the economy, innovation, tackling climate change, leadership, partnerships, and national security. A very broad view.
So who are the key players organizationally within the U.S. system now?
Well, you've got U.S. Spacecom, the combatant command specifically for space. They plan and conduct military space operations globally. Their domain is officially everything above 100 kilometers altitude.
And the Space Force.
The U.S. Space Force, USSF, the newest military branch, its job is to organize, train, and equip space forces. They have components like Space Operations Command, SPOC, and Space Training and Readiness Command, STARCOM, for doctrine and training, and various units called deltas focused on specific missions like SDA, electronic warfare, ISR, testing.
And the intelligence community must be deeply involved.
Oh, absolutely. Critical players. You have the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, for geomain imagery and mapping, the National Security Agency, NSA, for SIGINT and cybersecurity, and the National Reconnaissance Office, NRO. They're the ones who design, build, and actually operate the nation's spy satellites.
They all work together.
Supposedly, yes. Their roles are intertwined and interdependent for national security.
What about civilian agencies?
NASA, obviously, leading human spaceflight and scientific exploration, and NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They handle civil weather forecasting. They manage weather satellite systems, including the Defense Meteorological Satellite Program, DMSP, which actually serves both military and civilian needs. An interesting point is that by international agreement, civil weather satellite data is unencrypted. Anyone can download it.
Though maybe some countries restrict access during a crisis.
That's noted as a possibility, yeah.
Okay. All this hardware needs a ride. Spacelift. Getting there. The landscape changed a lot after the shuttle retired in 2011.
Big time. The U.S. became reliant, and essentially entirely reliant for a while, on commercial launch providers for getting government, military, and civil payloads into orbit. But that reliance has really supercharged the commercial launch industry. Huge innovation and competition now.
We see names like SpaceX all the time.
Exactly. SpaceX with their Falcon rockets, pioneering reusability, dramatically lowering launch costs. Blue Origin with their new Glenn heavy lifter coming online, also involved in space tourism. They're major players transforming access.
And it's not just the U.S. launching things anymore.
Not by a long shot. The sources list 9 countries, plus the European Space Agency, that can independently launch spacecraft now. China, India, Iran, Israel, Japan, Russia, North Korea, South Korea, U.S., ESA.
China and Russia are upgrading the rockets.
Yeah, they're moving towards more modular designs for their launch vehicle families, aiming for more efficiency and flexibility. It's a global capability now.
And the U.S. launch sites. Still Florida and California mainly.
Those are the 2 primary federal ranges. The Eastern Range, Cape Canaveral in Florida, mainly for launches heading east towards low-inclination orbits, or south for polar orbits sometimes. And the Western Range, Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, primarily for polar orbits going south over the Pacific, critical national assets.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. From how space tech is in your home, right up to orbital mechanics, the capabilities, the hazards, the competition, the policies.
It really is a journey from the everyday to the complex geopolitics of orbit. How space underpins modern life, the amazing tech involved, but also the very real evolving threats and the rules trying to manage it all.
The big takeaway seems to be, space isn't that final frontier out there anymore. It's right here, a domain that's crowded, contested, competitive.
And absolutely critical. It demands a much deeper understanding than maybe most people realize.
So here's something to think about. We've got this rapid spread of space capabilities globally, increasing militarization, counter-space weapons.
Yeah.
Yet we all rely on these satellites for essential services. How do you think this really delicate balance between international cooperation, which we need, and this fierce competition, how is that going to shape the future? not just in space, but life right here on Earth for all of us.